This video looks into one of the most feared and ruthless gangs in Inanda, the notorious West Gang. For years, this group of young criminals has terrorized their community, leaving a trail of violence and destruction in their wake. The West Gang is responsible for driving up the crime rate in Durban North, Inanda and surrounding areas, turning once safe streets into war zones. These young men thrive on chaos and anarchy, showing no regard for human life. Recently, reports have surfaced of intense clashes between gang members and the police, but rather than surrender, they chose to fight, engaging out with law enforcement. One such standoff ended with a brutal takedown of one of the gang's leaders, a 22-year-old Mngobi, who was hit and taken out after resisting arrest. Now in this episode, we'll take a deep dive into the West Gang, exploring their reign of terror, the crimes they committed, and how their downfall finally began.
He's the alleged leader of the West Gang, and that's a gang, for people that have been watching the channel or others that are living in this North Durban area, they would know the name very well, because the West Gang has been responsible for terrorizing communities in and around Durban, particularly in the north, in areas like Inanda and KwaMashu and Ntuzuma. We've also covered a number of or confrontations between suspects and police, where members of the West Gang that were being sought by police were.
Inanda, north of Durban, has now claimed the grim title of South Africa's new capital, dethroning Nyanga. This once thriving community is now plagued by ruthless violence, hits, assaults, dope pushing, hijackings, and home invasions. At the heart of this terror is a ruthless group of young criminals known as the West Gang. For too long, the West Gang has held Inanda hostage. Residents live in constant fear, with innocent people being marked on their way to work at dawn. Even members of the Community Policing Forum, who dare to stand against them, are being taken out. This gang has no respect for human life. They don't just terrorize civilians, they are fearless enough to take on the police, shooting and taking them out rather than face arrest. Now the situation has spiraled out of control. Recent news reports have shown violent clashes between criminals and police in KwaZulu-Natal, where deadly fights left gang members laid down. But behind the West Gang lurks an even darker force, the kingpins. These hidden masterminds are the ones truly pulling the strings, supplying the gang with dope, hammers, and money, profiting from the chaos while the streets of Inanda are filled with crime. It is alleged that members of the Community Policing Forum, the CPF in Inanda, have become prime targets for the criminals due to their efforts to combat crime and dope pushing. Now in June of 2024, a CPF member was taken out in his home in Zimangweni area. But the bloodshed didn't stop there. That same night, the ruthless gang stormed into Newtown C and took out another CPF member right in front of his wife. Just a week before, the same group had already claimed another victim, a CPF member who was hit and taken out in the Digwe area.
Ngiyazi ukuthi sekuvelile kaningana ukuthi ukhona iqembu kuthiwa ama West, abanye bathiwa wa West. Yini leyo nto? Awungitshele ngayo.
No, lana sihamba lapho. Athotheleli uma sebenza begazi lahlala. So man, bila betas, bilo today. Ungangokuthi thina siphilela ukuthi thina siyanguma, siyabulala, ngoba sifika nesabenza kangeqhaza. So nje sithelezi. So manje njengoba kuthiwa West, it's a group. Yangizwa mithi.
Kuzwa kahle mfethu.
Yes, igroup le engathotheleli edila nje negazi. Ukuthi suka afike kanjani ukuze kwenzeke khona. Hey, cabanga ukuthi ngizifaka lapha.
The violence escalated in July of 2024 when 3 suspects wanted for multiple hits, including that of Sergeant Yeganis Boniso Tabete, were hit and taken out in the Inanda's Congo area by the police. Now Sergeant Tabete, a dedicated member of the KwaMashu trekking team, was ambushed, disarmed, and brutally taken out with his own service hammer. The anarchy continued in July of 2024. Another suspect was fatally hit in Escaleni's Madlankala area after attempting to down police officers. Earlier in that day, that same suspect had been part of a gang that bombed an ATM at a store. In yet another clash, 6 suspects were taken out in a dramatic out with police in Inanda's Emaklobeni area. Acting on intelligence, officers tracked the group to a hideout where the suspects, wanted for house robberies, hits, business robberies, and carjackings, they opened fire as soon as the police announced their arrival. Now the cops returned fire, and when the dust settled, 6 suspects were laid down. 3 others, including 2 men and a 31-year-old woman, were arrested.
Listed among the most dangerous townships in the country, 6 suspects were in a touch with police. The group was wanted for a string of serious crimes, including murder and carjacking. Inanda police station continues to register high levels of
At around 6:40 a.m., police received multiple distress calls, including one from a bus passenger traveling along the M25 highway. The caller reported a gruesome sight: 3 lifeless bodies lying in a field next to Inanda Newtown Comprehensive High School. When the paramedics and the police arrived, they discovered the horrifying scene. The 3 men had been. One victim's right hand was partially, while another had his skull. Moments later, officers were alerted to 2 more bodies found in a nearby field, also victims of the same. As investigators combed through the scene, witnesses stepped forward, claiming the 5 slain men were well-known robbers and dope users who had long terrorized the community, and worse yet, they were allegedly responsible for assaulting multiple female students. It is believed that enraged residents had finally taken matters into their own hands, tracking the men down in the dead of night and putting them down.
Residents of Bambai woke up to a grim discovery. The bodies of 5 men who were found in this area. Police initially discovered 3 bodies at this crime scene, and upon further investigations, 2 more bodies were found in a nearby field. The victims are between the ages of 19 and 26. The men were allegedly kidnapped from their homes around midnight before being. One of the victims is 19-year-old Ayabonga Maduna. His mother is calling for justice.
Ngoba nobaba engane washona kanje naye ishona kanje ithathwe endlini njengobaba wayo yashoda athathwe endlini. Andisazi mami ndizokwenza njani. Sazi didekile ngoba ingane ivuswe endlini lele.
Umntwana ube neminyaka emingaki ma?
Ubena 19. Bena 19 umntwana.
Kuningi okukhulunywayo mangendaba yobugebengu endaweni, amanye amalungu omphakathi esikhulume nawo ayasho ukuthi buxakile ubugebengu. Umntwana mhlambe ungathi ube umntwana onjani ekhaya egcekeni, obaze umntwana onjani?
Maze umntwana oright mina egcekeni. Njengoba namanje ephutshwe endlini yakhe. Umntwana ngo10.
But the aftermath took an unexpected turn. Shortly after, police arrested 12 members of a local community forum that had been working to protect the people of Mbai in Inanda. The arrest sparked outrage. More than 300 furious residents from the Mbai informal settlement took to the streets demanding the immediate release of the suspects. Now, as the men were set to appear in the Ntuzuma Magistrate Court, protesters vowed to intensify their efforts if bail was denied, saying that if those guys don't get bail, they will have no choice but to mobilize more people.
Nonhlakanipa have seen reports suggesting that some residents there actually started protesting after these suspects were arrested.
Good morning, Ayan, and to the viewers at home. Yes, indeed, it is like that. They started protesting when these 12 suspects were arrested. I think it was 2 weeks back. They protested outside the police station late at night, closing off the police station. Police officers couldn't come out or come in until the POP came in to quieten down the situation. And then the following day, the community members held a community meeting, as well as a protest blockading the road, demanding that the 12 suspects who are arrested be released from custody, saying that these 12 suspects are not criminals. However, they are protecting the community from criminals. The community alleges that the 5 people who were alleged criminals who are terrorizing the community and
In March 2024, 6 men were suspected of brutally taking out a Durban art dealer, Ellen Gordon. It is alleged that 2 of the men who lived and worked with Gordon at his home in Durban North and poked him until he was no more. Investigators believe that after taking Gordon out, the suspect into the trunk of his VW SUV, drove to a remote bush in Ndwendwe and set the remains on fire before returning the vehicle to his home, perhaps in an attempt to cover their tracks. Now, the alarm was raised when Gordon's brother, Brian, reported him missing. Members of the local community policing forum, the CPF, along with police officers, visited Gordon's home to investigate. Concerned neighbors provided contact details for the 2 men who had been living with Gordon. When police and CPF members tracked the housemates down in Greenwood Park, one of them allegedly cracked under pressure, admitting that Gordon had been taken out and dumped in Ndwendwe. Acting swiftly, investigators, aided by informants, managed to track down 3 more suspects hiding in a house in Mapepeteni in Inanda. And one of the 6 accused was identified as Umnqobi. But now I'm not sure if this Umnqobi was the same one who was accused of being the leader of the West Gang. Acting on intelligence, police launched a high-stakes operation to intercept a notorious young gang leader, Umnqobi and his 2 accomplices. The trio was headed to Umhlanga, reportedly to collect dope and hammers. After making their pickup, the suspects swapped vehicles in an attempt to evade detection, but vigilant officers had already identified them and tracked their every move. The chase led to Vincent Dixon Road in Cottonlands, where the suspects finally parked their car, unaware that the law was closing in. As police moved in, the suspects reacted with unleashing a hail of shots in a desperate attempt to escape. A fierce shootout erupted. Now, when the dust settled, the 22-year-old gang leader Umnqobi and his 27-year-old accomplice were laid down. The third suspect, however, managed a narrow escape, and the police are still looking for him. The slain gang leader Umnqobi was apparently a ruthless criminal with a chilling record. He had a warrant out for his arrest for taking people out and was linked to over 20 cases, including more than 10 hits. His reign of terror also included attempted hits, stick-ups, intimidation, and arson. Officers recovered hammers in his possession. Now, Umnqobi was very young at 22 to have been the real shot caller of all the chaos that's happening. He was part of it, but was he really the shot caller? I don't know. Now, this is what I think. The real masterminds remain in the shadows, using young recruits to do their dirty work. Now, when Umnqobi and his crew were heading to Umhlanga to collect their tools, they were clearly on their way to either their supplier or the true kingpin behind the operation. That's where the police attention should focus. Taking down the one pulling the strings, because these boys are just pawns being used like crash dummies. As soon as one is out, a new, younger and hungrier member takes his place and the game continues. But one thing is certain, the people of KZN are standing behind the police and the General Umkhonazi. Their crackdown on crime has been far more effective than anything Begitele accomplished. As criminals fall, the public finally sees justice being served, slowly but one day at a time.